Katt Williams just made one of the boldest accusations in Hollywood. He says a powerful industry figure offered him $100,000 to take his clothes off, and he has the recording to prove it. He won't say the name outright, but according to him, the voice is unmistakable. Anyone who hears it will know exactly who it is. The target of his claims? Tyler Perry. Katt says Perry isn't just a filmmaker, he's a gatekeeper. He claims Perry controls casting in a way that silences actors, blacklists those who speak up, and rewards obedience over talent. If you don't play by the rules, you're out. And the rules? They're not written anywhere. They're whispered behind closed doors. This isn't the first time Katt has exposed the dark side of Hollywood, but this time he's pointing the finger directly at one of black entertainment's most celebrated names. He says the image of success and empowerment is a cover, and behind it, there's a pattern of manipulation, pressure, and silence, and he's not the only one speaking out. Lawsuits, interviews, and witness accounts are now surfacing that seem to back up his claims. Actors are telling stories of roles being changed last minute, private messages turning personal, and careers being controlled by forces no one talks about in public. If what Katt says is true, then Tyler Perry's empire may be built on more than just scripts and success. It may be held together by fear, silence, and power plays no one was ever supposed to talk about. But now, it's all being dragged into the light. Katt Williams didn't just speak out, he dropped receipts. In his explosive interview, he claimed that getting cast in a Tyler Perry project has nothing to do with talent and everything to do with obedience. According to him, Perry runs a tight operation where silence is currency, and stepping out of line means your career is done. Katt didn't hesitate. He said outright that actors are expected to fall in line if they want to stay in Tyler's circle. And those who ask questions, those who refuse to play by the unspoken rules, they don't get callbacks, they get blacklisted. Then came the real bombshell. Katt claims he was personally offered $100,000 to strip by someone deeply embedded in the industry. He says this wasn't hearsay, it wasn't rumor, it was real, and he recorded it because he didn't trust the situation. He told this individual no more than once, but the offers didn't stop. So he hit record, he kept the evidence. According to Katt, anyone who listens to the tape will immediately recognize the voice. He says it will break your heart because it confirms what many suspected but never dared to say out loud. There are powerful people in Hollywood using their influence to manipulate, exploit, and control those just trying to break into the industry. But Katt didn't stop there. He hinted that Perry handpicked certain actors not for their skill, but for their willingness to remain silent, to play along, to keep secrets. He even suggested there's an under-the-table payroll system, where actors are rewarded behind the scenes with money, recurring roles, or special treatment, as long as they don't talk, and when they do talk, when they push back or question what's going on, they vanish from the credits, their names disappear. Careers that once looked promising are quietly stalled or erased altogether. Fans started connecting the dots. They looked at how often Tyler Perry reuses the same handful of actors. They noticed the faces that disappeared after just one or two appearances, and they started asking hard questions. What happened to the rising stars who never came back? What did they say no to? For Katt, it's not about canceling anyone. He made it clear. This isn't personal. He doesn't hate Tyler Perry. He even gave credit to Perry's work ethic and success, but he refuses to stay quiet when people are being used and discarded. And he's done playing the Hollywood game by their rules. As he put it, he'd rather take the long road with his integrity than sell out for a shortcut. But that wasn't the whole story. Right after Katt's revelations started circulating, a lawsuit hit the headlines that took everything to another level. Actor Derek Dixon, who appeared on Tyler Perry's hit shows Ruthless and The Oval, filed a massive $260 million lawsuit against Perry, and the details inside that legal filing lined up disturbingly well with what Katt had just described. According to Derek, this wasn't just about acting opportunities, it was personal from day one. He says it all started in 2019 when Perry noticed him in a crowd at an event and approached him directly. Perry allegedly asked for his number and hinted that a role might be available for him in an upcoming project. Not long after, Derek was cast in Ruthless. At first, it looked like a promising break. But behind the scenes, Derek claims things quickly took a disturbing turn. In early 2020, Derek says Perry invited him to his Atlanta mansion, under the impression it was to build a professional relationship. Instead, Derek alleges that Perry crossed the line. After drinking too much and falling asleep in a guest room, Derek claims he woke up to find Perry touching his thighs without permission. He says he shut it down immediately, but the situation didn't end there. Despite what happened, Derek was offered another role, this time in The Oval, where he played a character named Dale. And this is where things get even more disturbing. Dale was written as a gay, homeless store clerk who traded intimacy for a roof over his head. Given the context of what Derek says happened behind the scenes, fans began to question whether that role was crafted to reflect something Perry allegedly wanted from him in real life. Derek says this wasn't just uncomfortable, it felt targeted. He claims Perry told him directly that he was looking for someone who fit that exact character profile: vulnerable, dependent, and loyal. And after that, Derek says the messages started. Not professional check-ins, not script notes, personal, inappropriate messages that crossed every line. He claims Perry began bombarding him with late-night texts asking about his preferences, describing his own, and making suggestive comments that had nothing to do with work. According to the lawsuit, Derek saved those messages and included them in court documents. Some texts allegedly said things like, "You are the rose," and another read, "No straight man would be walking with you unless he wanted to. You, and I would you." That's the kind of language now tied directly to the case. Perry's legal team quickly fired back, calling the entire lawsuit a shakedown and denying every allegation. They said it was a desperate attempt to score a payout by twisting the truth. But Derek didn't back down. He says this wasn't about money, it was about speaking up after feeling pressured into silence for too long. He says he tried to keep things calm. He avoided confrontation. He responded with vague deflections like, "I'm not the sexual type," hoping that would be enough to stop the situation from escalating. But in private, he says he was terrified. Saying no too directly, he feared, would destroy his entire career. And that fear? That's exactly what Katt Williams warned about. Katt once said that the moment a black actor refuses to play the game in Hollywood, the system flips the narrative. Suddenly, the person raising concerns becomes the problem. They're labeled difficult, unstable, or worse, crazy. Katt even pointed to what happened to Dave Chappelle when he walked away from $50 million. The media painted him as unhinged, but Katt says he was just one of the few brave enough to walk away. Derek says he felt the same pressure, and now he's risking everything to expose it. But he's not the only one. While Derek Dixon's lawsuit shook the industry, it wasn't the only story putting Tyler Perry's casting methods under fire. Actor and vocal coach Brandon Jay came forward with his own shocking experience, and it echoed many of the same red flags Katt Williams and Derek described. Brandon was cast in the Tyler Perry sitcom Meet the Browns. His role was supposed to be Jeffrey, a smart, overweight high schooler dealing with bullying. It wasn't glamorous, but it was meaningful. He studied the script thoroughly, memorized every line, and showed up to set prepared for the table read. The episode was already blocked by the director, Alfonso Ribeiro, yes, Carlton from The Fresh Prince of Bel-Air, and everything seemed to be running smoothly, until Tyler Perry walked in. According to Brandon, everything changed the moment Perry arrived on set. He says Perry took over the creative process completely, scrapping the original plan, rewriting the script on the spot, and feeding Brandon new lines that weren't part of what he had originally auditioned for. That would have been stressful enough, but what Perry allegedly did next raised even more eyebrows. Brandon claims Perry decided to alter the character's entire identity mid-production. Suddenly, Jeffrey wasn't just a bullied teen. Now, he was a closeted gay student with a romantic crush on his bully. None of this had been discussed beforehand. Brandon had never agreed to play this version of the character, and the way the change was introduced, last minute without notice, made him uncomfortable. He said the pressure to comply was heavy. The director, now pushed to the sidelines, stood by silently. The message was clear: do what Perry says, or risk losing the role entirely. This wasn't just a creative pivot. To Brandon, it felt personal, like the character had been rewritten to push a narrative that had nothing to do with the story and everything to do with an agenda, one that he never signed up for. Brandon's account didn't come with a lawsuit, but it didn't need to. It went viral on its own. Viewers and former cast members started comparing notes, and the more people dug, the more they realized this wasn't an isolated incident. Many began to see a pattern. Male characters in Perry's productions were often rewritten or portrayed in ways that stripped away their dignity or strength. They were frequently emasculated, portrayed as unstable, or used for comic relief in ways that felt more humiliating than humorous. And now people were starting to ask, was this just a creative choice? Or was something more personal influencing the direction of these roles? Katt Williams had warned that certain Hollywood power players only let black men climb the ladder if they were willing to be stripped of their image, if they were willing to take roles that compromised how they were seen, especially by their own community. And when you take Brandon's story, line it up with Derek Dixon's allegations, and then look back at what Katt Williams has been shouting for years, it all starts to feel less like coincidence and more like a blueprint. But if this pattern is real, then surely others have noticed it too, right? Turns out, someone did, and he said it loud enough to shake the table. Christian Keyes never dropped a name. He didn't have to. In an older interview that's now resurfacing, Keyes spoke carefully, but the message was crystal clear to those paying attention. He said there was a powerful figure in the entertainment industry who tried to manipulate him behind closed doors, someone who used their influence not to elevate talent, but to control it. Keyes described the kind of pressure that doesn't show up in contracts or meetings, but creeps in through private conversations and unspoken expectations. He didn't give details, but the timing of his remarks and his long-running collaborations with Tyler Perry didn't go unnoticed. Fans quickly connected the dots. Christian had worked with Perry on multiple projects, TV shows, films, even stage plays. He was a familiar face in Perry's productions and one of the few actors who had earned repeat appearances. But after his cryptic warning, many noticed he suddenly stopped appearing in Perry's newer work. Just like that, he was gone. That silence became its own kind of statement. Keyes' decision not to name names likely wasn't out of fear. It was strategy. Hollywood has a long history of turning on those who speak too directly. When actors come forward with uncomfortable truths, the system doesn't just ignore them, it works to erase them. Careers stall, opportunities dry up, and soon they're labeled hard to work with. But what Christian did was different. He planted a seed, one that started to grow the moment others came forward with similar stories, and he wasn't alone in his silence. Fans began to realize that a lot of former Perry collaborators had gone quiet. People who were once all over red carpets and talk shows suddenly disappeared from press tours and interviews. They weren't speaking out, but they weren't showing up either. Some called it professionalism, others called it fear. When people started lining up the timelines, when they worked with Perry, when they stopped, what they said and what they didn't say, a troubling pattern emerged. Keyes wasn't the only one who had been pressured. He was just one of the few who dared to hint at it, and that hint cracked the door open for everything that followed. But what happens when someone does speak out? What happens when they refuse to play along, even if it means walking away from millions? Katt Williams says we've seen that play out before, and the example he gave still stings to this day. When people ask why more actors don't speak up, Katt Williams always points to one name, Dave Chappelle. Chappelle was at the top of his game. Chappelle's show was a cultural phenomenon, Comedy Central was backing up the money truck, and fans were ready for more. Then, out of nowhere, he walked away from a $50 million deal. The media went wild. Headlines labeled him unstable. Oprah invited him on her show and asked point blank if he had a breakdown. But Chappelle didn't flinch. He didn't crack. He just stared back and said no. According to Katt, this wasn't a meltdown. It was a warning sign. Chappelle had seen what happens behind the scenes. He recognized the strings being pulled, the roles being offered, and the sacrifices that were being expected in exchange for success. And he wanted no part of it. Instead of being praised for protecting his integrity, he was branded as unpredictable, unstable, even crazy. The narrative was flipped overnight, and that, Katt says, is how Hollywood keeps control. You speak out, they take your voice. You step away, they erase your legacy. And if you come back, they expect you to fall in line. Derek Dixon said he felt that same pressure. So did Brandon Jay, so did Christian Keys. And Katt, who's been in the game long enough to see careers built and destroyed overnight, says the machine is still running. It doesn't matter how much talent you have, how loyal you've been, or how hard you've worked. If you won't play the game, you're out. And if you try to expose it, you're labeled a threat. It's a formula, a script, and for years, it worked. But now, that script is falling apart because receipts are being dropped, timelines are being matched, and patterns are becoming too obvious to ignore. And when you take a closer look at the roles being written and the stories being told, the truth starts showing up on the screen. You don't need to dig deep to spot the trend. Just watch the films. Time and time again, Tyler Perry's male characters, especially black men, are written into roles that feel less like storytelling and more like subtle humiliation. They're stripped down, emotionally broken, cast as villains, victims, or punchlines. Often, they're portrayed as weak, unstable, or emasculated in ways that seem to go beyond the needs of the script. Fans have noticed, and now they're asking, is this just creative expression, or is it something more personal? Some viewers argue that Perry's characters reflect real issues in the black community: addiction, trauma, broken families. But others say there's a clear bias in how male strength is portrayed, or more accurately, not portrayed. When you line up all the characters, Jeffrey from Meet the Browns, Dale from The Oval, countless others, it becomes hard to ignore the repetitive nature of their arcs. And when you connect those character portrayals to the behind-the-scenes allegations from actors like Derek Dixon and Brandon Jay, the picture gets even darker. People are starting to ask if these roles are intentionally written to reflect power dynamics happening off-screen. If certain actors were chosen not to portray a story, but to play a part in something much bigger, something controlled. This isn't about conspiracy theories. It's about patterns, about choices, about a man who has complete creative control over one of the most powerful production studios in the world, and what he does with that power. And then comes the silence. So many former cast members who once proudly promoted Perry's work have disappeared from press junkets, red carpets, and interviews. No farewell posts, no exit stories, just silence. Some say they're just choosing to stay out of the drama. Others believe it's fear, that speaking out, or even speaking at all, could mean saying goodbye to their career forever. And while fans debate motives, social media isn't staying quiet. In fact, it's doing the exact opposite. Because now, receipts are flying, and one major voice just jumped into the fire. As more actors came forward and the allegations piled up, the internet exploded. Old interviews were resurfaced, timelines were dissected, and patterns were laid bare for everyone to see. But what really lit the match was when 50 Cent stepped in. Known for being blunt and unapologetically outspoken, 50 posted a photo of himself with Tyler Perry and added a caption that had people doing double takes. It wasn't hostile, it wasn't dramatic, but it was laced with a message that couldn't be ignored. Did that boy just say what I think he said? Nah, we ain't jacking this game. For someone who had previously praised Perry and even worked closely with him, the shift was loud, even if it wasn't explicit, and it confirmed what many were already feeling: loyalty in Hollywood has its limits. Even the most successful figures won't back behavior they can't stand behind. Fans started combing through old footage, scenes, scripts, interviews, and they weren't liking what they found. In one clip, Perry jokes about playing a woman too well, and suddenly, that line took on a different meaning. People weren't laughing anymore. They were analyzing, and the question started to echo louder than ever. Is all of this really just creative choice? Or has Perry been hiding in plain sight, using the veil of representation to push a personal agenda? As the noise got louder, so did the demand for answers. But instead of responding with transparency, Perry brushed off the controversy with a vague, calming video, telling fans to stay calm and not overthink. But people weren't overthinking. They were connecting dots. They were looking at the lawsuit, at the deleted interviews, at the cryptic posts, and at the actors who suddenly vanished after. Refusing to play along, the internet doesn't forget, And now that the lid had been blown off, it wasn't about rumors anymore. It was about accountability, and as Katt Williams predicted, the moment someone like him spoke out, the machine would go into overdrive trying to flip the script. The accused becomes the victim, the whistleblowers become the villains, and the system carries on, untouched. But this time, it wasn't working, because this time, too many voices were echoing the same truth. For years, Tyler Perry was celebrated as a trailblazer, a man who carved out his own lane, built an empire, and gave black actors a stage when Hollywood wouldn't. But now, the same system he built is under fire, not from outsiders, but from those who helped create it. Katt Williams said it best: the so-called gatekeepers were always going to be exposed, and now, that moment may finally be here. Derek Dixon is suing. Brandon Jay is speaking. Christian Keys is warning. Former cast members are vanishing, and the roles themselves, once praised for representation, are now being re-examined for what they really show: a pattern, a system of control disguised as opportunity, a cycle of loyalty traded for silence, and a man at the top who allegedly expects more than just talent from those he brings into his circle. And maybe that's the hardest part, because people wanted to believe in Tyler Perry. They wanted to believe in the image, the rags to riches story, the work ethic, the clean reputation. But behind the suits, studios, and success, more and more voices are saying the same thing. The image doesn't match the reality. Whether the lawsuit leads to anything or not, whether more actors speak out or stay silent, one thing is clear: something's shifting. And it's not just about Tyler Perry, it's about the entire system that allowed this kind of power to go unchecked. Hollywood has a long history of protecting its favorites, especially when there's money on the line. But when enough people start pulling back the curtain, even the biggest empires start to crack. Katt Williams didn't just start a conversation. He opened a floodgate. And now that the truth is pouring out, the industry can't look away anymore. So the question now isn't if change is coming. The question is, who's going to survive it?